Daddy, I have a Christmas surprise, the little girl said, motioning toward the Apache widow. It was a cold December afternoon, and the small town of Cedar Pines was blanketed in a thick layer of snow, the kind of snow that sparkled like tiny diamonds under the weak winter sun, making the whole town look as if it had been sprinkled with magic. Children ran across the streets, throwing snowballs and laughing, while the smell of hot cocoa and pine filled the air from the houses decorated with colorful lights and ornaments. For most people, it was a perfect day before Christmas. But for 8-year-old Emily, it felt like an ordinary winter day, until something extraordinary happened. Emily was a small, lively girl with curly brown hair that always seemed a little untamed, as if it had a mind of its own. Her bright green eyes were full of curiosity and excitement, and her laughter could light up any room. She lived with her father, John, in a modest house at the edge of town. John was a retired Army officer, a quiet man with deep-set eyes that often seemed to be studying the world around him. He loved Emily more than anything, but he had grown cautious over the years, wary of strangers and the unexpected turns life sometimes took. He liked things to be calm, safe, and predictable. That afternoon, Emily returned from school with a bounce in her step that John had never seen before. She dropped her backpack by the door, kicked off her snow-covered boots, and raced straight into the living room. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement, and her eyes were shining like the Christmas lights on their small tree. "Daddy! Daddy! You won't believe what I saw!" Emily exclaimed, tugging at John's sleeve. John looked up from his chair where he had been reading the newspaper and raised an eyebrow. "What is it, Emily?" "Calm down a little, will you?" Emily shook her head, as if calming down was impossible.
"No! You have to come and see."
"It's a Christmas surprise!" John sighed but smiled at her enthusiasm. He set his newspaper aside and followed her to the front window. That was when he saw her, a woman standing quietly by the front gate. She looked old, but not weak. Her face was lined with years of experience, and her eyes held the kind of sadness that John could not place. She wore a long, dark coat and a scarf wrapped tightly around her head, shielding her from the cold. Her hands were folded in front of her, and she watched their house as if she had been waiting for someone. "Who is she, Emily?" John asked cautiously, a hint of concern in his voice. "She's the Christmas surprise," Emily said with a grin, pointing toward the woman. "Please, Daddy, can we invite her in?" John frowned. "Emily, I don't know her. We shouldn't just invite strangers into our home." Emily pouted. "But Daddy, she looks lonely. And it's Christmas. Maybe she doesn't have anyone to spend it with, please." John hesitated. He looked back at the woman, who remained silent, standing still as a statue in the falling snow. Something about her presence felt different. She wasn't threatening, and there was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself. Maybe Emily was right. Maybe it was Christmas. And maybe it was time for a little kindness. "All right," John said slowly.
"But just for a little while. If she wants to come in, we'll be polite, but we're not making any promises."
Emily squealed in delight and ran to the door, pulling it open with both hands. "Hello," she called cheerfully. "Would you like to come in?" The woman looked surprised for a moment, then nodded gently. She walked toward the house, her movements careful but graceful, as if each step had meaning. When she reached the doorstep, Emily grabbed her hand and guided her inside. "Thank you," the woman said softly, her voice warm but quiet. "I'm Mariah." "Mariah." "Hi, Mariah. I'm Emily, and this is my daddy," Emily said proudly, introducing her father with a shy but hopeful smile. John nodded politely. "It's nice to meet you, Mariah. Coming out of the cold." Mariah smiled faintly and stepped inside, brushing the snow from her coat. She looked around the room with a quiet curiosity, taking in the modest furniture, the small Christmas tree with its twinkling lights, and the smell of cinnamon and pine that filled the air. Emily ran to the kitchen and came back with a cup of warm cocoa. "Here, Mariah. This will make you feel cozy," she said, handing it to her. Mariah accepted it with a grateful nod, her hands wrapping around the warm cup. "Thank you, Emily." "That's very kind of you." John watched the interaction quietly, sipping his own cup of cocoa. There was something about Mariah that made him feel uneasy, yet not in a bad way. It was more like curiosity mixed with a hint of caution. He didn't know her story, and yet he felt there was something important about her being here, in their home, on this particular day. Emily, on the other hand, was already bubbling with questions. "Are you here for Christmas, Mariah? Do you have a family? What's your favorite holiday memory?" Mariah chuckled softly. I haven't really celebrated Christmas in a long time. My husband and I used to, but now it's just me." She paused, her eyes clouding with a distant sadness. "He passed away many years ago. I've lived alone since then."
Emily's eyes widened. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Mariah."
"But don't worry, you can spend Christmas with us. We can celebrate together." John watched as Emily's words brought a small but genuine smile to Mariah's face. For the first time that day, her shoulders seemed to relax a little. As the afternoon went on, Emily bombarded Mariah with questions, eager to learn about her life. Mariah spoke slowly at first, choosing her words carefully, but as she grew more comfortable, her stories flowed more freely. She told them about her childhood in the Southwest, the vast deserts and mountains she had grown up around, and the traditions of her people. She spoke of her late husband, a man who had loved the land and the stories of their ancestors, and of the lessons he had taught her about patience, courage, and kindness. John listened quietly, sipping his cocoa, feeling a strange mixture of emotions. There was sadness in Mariah's stories, yes, but there was also wisdom and strength. She had lived a life full of experiences, some joyful and some heartbreaking, and yet she carried herself with grace. Emily's excitement never waned. She asked Mariah to tell her more about the games she played as a child, the songs she sang, and the food her family used to eat during Christmas. Mariah answered with a smile, and soon the living room was filled with warmth, laughter, and the aroma of freshly baked cookies Emily had made earlier that day. As evening approached, the snow outside grew heavier, and the town of Cedar Pines became quieter. The soft glow of the Christmas lights cast a warm hue over the room, making everything feel magical. Emily, exhausted from her day of excitement, snuggled into her father's lap, her head resting on his shoulder. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling of the fireplace, "isn't Mariah wonderful? I think she's really lonely, but she's so nice. I'm glad she's here." John smiled, wrapping an arm around his daughter. "She is, Emily, and I'm glad you convinced me to let her in. It's a good reminder that sometimes strangers can become friends when we give them a chance." Mariah looked around the room, her eyes softening as she glanced at Emily and John. For the first time in many years, she felt a sense of belonging, a small but significant warmth in her heart. She realized that this little family had opened their home and their hearts to her, and in doing so, they had reminded her of the true spirit of Christmas: kindness, connection, and the joy of being together. As night fell and the snow continued to drift gently from the sky, Emily whispered, "One last thing before falling asleep. Daddy, I have a Christmas surprise for you tomorrow, but you'll have to wait and see." John chuckled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'll be waiting, Emily. I promise. Outside, Mariah stood by the window, looking out at the snow-covered town. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope and happiness. Maybe this Christmas would be different. Maybe this time, she wouldn't be alone. And somehow, she knew that Emily's little surprise would be the beginning of something wonderful for all of them. The next morning, Emily woke up earlier than usual, her excitement bubbling over like a sparkling fountain. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, catching the frost on the window pane and making it glitter like tiny diamonds. She jumped out of bed, careful not to wake her father, and ran to the living room. Mariah was already there, sitting quietly in the armchair near the fireplace, wrapped in a soft blanket. Her eyes were calm, almost reflective, as she watched the small flames dance in the hearth. "Good morning, Mariah," Emily said cheerfully, her voice full of energy. "Did you sleep well?" Mariah smiled gently. "I slept well, thank you, Emily. This house, it feels warm in more ways than one." Emily giggled. "Daddy says the same thing. He was so happy yesterday that he let you stay for Christmas." Mariah's eyes softened as she looked at John, who was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee with a quiet smile. There was a protective look on his face, the same look he had whenever Emily was involved in one of her imaginative plans. He hadn't expected to feel such ease with a stranger in the house, yet here he was, feeling strangely comfortable with Mariah's presence. Emily ran to the kitchen and began bustling around, putting together a small breakfast. She was determined to make this morning perfect. She prepared pancakes, eggs, and hot cocoa for everyone. The aroma filled the house, and soon even John seemed to relax further, drawn in by Emily's energy and Mariah's gentle warmth. As they ate, Emily leaned forward, her elbows on the table. "Maria, can you tell me more about your home? What's it like where you grew up?" Mariah looked down at her cup, thinking carefully before speaking. "I grew up in a place with wide open skies, red rocks and desert winds that whispered old stories."
My family belonged to the Apache people. We learned from the land, from the animals, and from each other.
Life was simple, but it was full of lessons about courage, respect, and patience. Emily's eyes widened. "Courage? Like being brave?" "Yes," Mariah replied softly. "Being brave doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it means standing up for what is right, helping someone in need, or even being honest about your feelings. My husband and I learned that every day." John listened quietly. He wasn't sure why, but he felt drawn into Mariah's stories. There was a gentle strength in her voice that seemed to fill the room, like an invisible thread weaving them together. Emily, of course, was completely captivated. She asked question after question, wanting to know everything: what Mariah's childhood games had been, what songs she had sung, the food she had eaten, and the traditions she had cherished during Christmas. Mariah answered with care, sharing small details about her life. She told Emily about making handmade ornaments from natural materials, like pine cones, feathers, and colorful stones. She spoke of songs that told stories about the stars and the land, and of family meals that were simple yet meaningful. Emily listened with rapt attention, her mind spinning with ideas.
"Daddy, can we make some of those ornaments too?" Emily asked eagerly.
John chuckled. "We can, Emily. It sounds like a wonderful idea." Emily's eyes lit up. "Then we can make a Christmas like Mariah's and ours. And maybe it can be even more special because we're all doing it together." Mariah smiled at Emily's enthusiasm, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years. She realized that this little girl had a gift, a way of seeing the good in everyone and everything, even in strangers like herself. After breakfast, Emily insisted on showing Mariah her favorite places in the house. She led her to the little attic where she kept her collection of books and drawings. Sunlight poured through a small window, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. Emily had carefully arranged her things, and she proudly displayed her handmade cards, her sketches of animals, and her tiny wooden toys. Mariah knelt down to look at Emily's artwork. "These are beautiful, Emily," she said softly. "You have a special way of seeing the world." Emily beamed. "Thanks, Mariah. I think you have a special way, too. You tell stories that feel like magic."
Mariah chuckled.
"Yes, perhaps there is a little magic in every story, and in every act of kindness." The morning passed quickly. Emily and Mariah sat together at the small table in the living room, making ornaments inspired by Mariah's childhood. Pine cones were decorated with tiny beads, feathers, and colorful threads. They strung them together with twine, laughing when the glue made little messes on their fingers. Emily's excitement was contagious, and even John found himself drawn into the activity, helping to tie the ornaments to the tree and marveling at how creative his daughter and Mariah were. By afternoon, the snow outside had grown heavier, covering the town in a thick white blanket. The streets were quiet, and the world felt hushed and peaceful. Emily looked out the window and then back at Mariah. "Mariah," she said thoughtfully, "do you ever get lonely?" Mariah paused, her eyes distant. "Sometimes," she admitted. "After my husband passed, I spent many years alone. It was quiet, too quiet. But today, being here with you and your father, it feels like I've found a small part of a family again." Emily's eyes shone. "Then you have to stay. You can be our family for Christmas, and maybe even after." John cleared his throat gently, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth.
Emily, let's take it one day at a time.
"But I think it's a wonderful idea." Mariah's smile grew warmer. She looked at John, seeing not a stranger, but someone who had opened his home and his heart in ways she had almost forgotten were possible. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope, a gentle, comforting hope that maybe, just maybe, she could find connection and joy again. As the evening approached, Emily suggested they take a short walk outside in the snow. She bundled Mariah up in extra scarves and mittens, and John followed, keeping a watchful eye. The snow crunched softly beneath their boots as they walked through the quiet streets of Cedar Pines. Emily made small snowmen along the way, insisting that Mariah and John help her, and Mariah laughed at Emily's creative ideas, feeling more alive than she had in years. They returned home just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Emily's cheeks were rosy, and her eyes sparkled with joy. John looked at Mariah and saw the quiet contentment in her expression, the kind that comes from being seen and appreciated. That night, as Emily fell asleep, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow is going to be the best Christmas ever. I just know it." Mariah sat by the window, sipping her tea in silence, thinking about the unexpected turn her life had taken. She had come to Cedar Pines with no plan, no family, no connection. Yet here she was, invited into a home filled with warmth, kindness, and laughter. She realized that life had a way of surprising you when you least expected it, and sometimes the best surprises came from the smallest, most innocent hearts, like Emily's. John, too, sat quietly in the living room reflecting on the day. He had learned something valuable from Emily and Mariah, that sometimes opening your heart, even when it's scary, can lead to moments of unexpected beauty. The trust and warmth between them felt fragile, yet promising, like a delicate ornament waiting to be placed on a tree. And so, as the night settled over the snow-covered town, their small home glowed with the gentle light of hope, kindness, and new beginnings. Emily's Christmas surprise was already unfolding, not in material gifts or decorations, but in the quiet joy of friendship, trust, and the first hints of a family brought together by the simplest acts of love. The morning sun shone weakly through the frost-covered windows, casting a soft golden light across the small living room. Snow still blanketed the town of cedar pines, muffling the sounds of the outside world. Inside, the house was warm, filled with the scent of cinnamon and pine, and the soft crackle of the fireplace created a cozy rhythm that matched the hearts of those within. Emily awoke with a bright excitement, knowing today would be another day of fun, learning, and preparation for the special Christmas surprise she had planned. She dressed quickly, humming a cheerful tune as she tied her curly brown hair into a loose ponytail. Her father, John, had already started his morning routine, quietly reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. Mariah, the mysterious Apache widow who had come into their lives just 2 days ago, sat by the window, sipping her tea and gazing thoughtfully at the snowy landscape outside. "Good morning, Mariah," Emily chirped as she entered the kitchen, her eyes sparkling. "I can't wait to start today. There's so much I want to show you." Maria smiled softly. "Good morning, Emily. I'm looking forward to it. What adventures do you have in mind for today?" Emily grinned, bouncing on the balls of her feet. "First, we'll finish the ornaments we started yesterday, and then we're going to make something really special for the Christmas tree. You'll see."
John looked up from his coffee and smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. "You're certainly full of energy this morning, Emily."
"I think we'll all be busy today." The morning passed in a flurry of activity. Emily and Mariah worked together on the ornaments, adding little touches of creativity and care. Emily insisted on using colors that reminded her of the snowy outdoors, whites, blues, and silvers. But Mariah added warm tones of red, gold, and green, inspired by her memories of Christmases past. Together they created ornaments that were simple yet beautiful, each one carrying a story or memory. As they worked, Emily asked more questions about Mariah's life, her voice filled with curiosity. "Mariah, did you always celebrate Christmas like this when you were a child?" Mariah thought for a moment, her eyes distant. "Not exactly. Christmas was always quiet where I grew up. We didn't have many gifts, but we had each other, and we celebrated with songs, stories, and food. We made our own decorations from things we found in nature, pine cones, feathers, stones, and each one had meaning. It was simple, but it felt like magic." Emily's eyes widened. "Magic, that's exactly what we need for our Christmas tree." She looked at her father. "Daddy, can we try to make our tree like Mariah's? Not just pretty, but full of stories and memories." John nodded slowly. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Emily. It will make this Christmas very special for all of us." By late morning, the ornaments were complete, and Emily and Mariah turned their attention to another project, a small handcrafted garland made of twine, beads, and tiny charms. Emily insisted that each charm should represent something important to them, a memory, a wish, or a story. She handed one to Mariah, a small silver feather. "This is for you, Mariah," Emily said softly. "It's to remind you that you're part of our family now, that even if you've been alone, you're not alone anymore." Mariah's eyes filled with tears, though she quickly blinked them away. "Emily, that's the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me. Thank you." John watched the interaction quietly, feeling a mixture of pride and emotion. He had never seen his daughter show such empathy and thoughtfulness, and he realized that Mariah's presence had brought out the best in both of them. After lunch, Emily suggested they take a short walk to gather natural materials for more decorations. She bundled Mariah in her warmest scarf and mittens, and together with John, they ventured into the snow-covered woods behind their house. The air was crisp and refreshing, and the snow crunched pleasantly beneath their boots. Emily ran ahead, collecting pine cones and small twigs, while Mariah taught her how to spot colorful stones and berries that could be used to make more ornaments. "This is wonderful," Mariah said, holding a small bundle of pine cones. "I haven't been outside like this in a long time. It feels alive," Emily beamed. "See, Daddy? Mariah says it's alive." "That's the magic of nature." John smiled, enjoying the simplicity and beauty of the moment. The three of them returned home with their treasures, ready to continue their decorating. The afternoon was filled with laughter and creativity. Emily and Mariah strung the pine cones and beads together, creating garlands that would wrap around the Christmas tree. They carefully added the small charms they had made, each one representing a story or a memory. Emily placed a tiny wooden bird on the highest branch, a symbol of hope and new beginnings. Mariah added a small star made from beads, a reminder of the guidance and light that family and kindness can provide. As the sun began to set, the living room glowed with warmth from the fireplace and the twinkling lights of the tree. The ornaments shimmered softly, each one a small story waiting to be discovered. Emily stepped back and admired their work. "It's perfect, Mariah." "Daddy, look at how beautiful it is." John nodded, genuinely impressed. "It really is. You've done something very special, Emily. And Mariah, your stories and memories have made it even more meaningful." Mariah smiled, feeling a deep sense of contentment. "Thank you, John. I haven't felt this happy in a long time. You and Emily have reminded me that life can still be full of warmth and joy, even when you think it's over." Emily clapped her hands together. "Now comes the best part. Daddy, Mariah, tomorrow is the big Christmas surprise. I've been planning it for days, and I can't wait to show you." John raised an eyebrow, curious but amused. "I'll admit, Emily, you've got my attention. I'm intrigued to see what you have in mind." Mariah leaned closer to Emily and whispered, "Whatever it is, I'm sure it will be wonderful." "You have a very special heart, Emily." That night, after dinner, the three of them settled in the living room with hot cocoa. Emily curled up on the rug near the fireplace. John sat in his chair, and Mariah in her favorite armchair. The room was quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire. Emily's eyes were heavy with sleep, but her mind was still racing with excitement for the surprise she had planned. "Mariah," Emily said softly, "do you think Christmas can really be magical?" Mariah looked into Emily's eyes, seeing the innocence, hope, and joy reflected there. "I do, Emily, especially when it's shared with others. Magic isn't just about gifts or decorations. It's about love, kindness, and the moments we spend together." Emily smiled, feeling reassured. "Then we're going to make this the most magical Christmas ever." John watched his daughter and Mariah, feeling a quiet pride. He realized that this small, unexpected visitor had brought more joy and life into their home than he could have imagined. In Emily's simple belief in magic and Mariah's gentle wisdom, he saw a new kind of family forming, one that wasn't bound by blood, but by heart and kindness. As Emily drifted off to sleep that night, she whispered once more to herself, "Tomorrow, Daddy and Mariah are going to see my Christmas surprise. It's going to be perfect." Mariah sat by the window, sipping her tea in silence, reflecting on how quickly life could change. She had come to Cedar Pines without expectations, unsure of what awaited her. Yet now she had found friendship, warmth, and a sense of belonging. The Christmas tree, adorned with ornaments full of stories, symbolized something more than decoration. It symbolized connection, hope, and new beginnings. John closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the quiet joy of the house. He thought about the past, about the challenges and losses he had faced, and realized that sometimes the most meaningful moments come from opening your heart to the unexpected. Emily had reminded him of that lesson in the purest and simplest way, a child's unwavering belief in the goodness of people. And so the house was filled with anticipation, warmth, and quiet excitement. The story of Emily's Christmas surprise was already beginning to unfold, not with grand gestures, but with small, heartfelt actions that reminded them all of the magic of kindness, love, and connection. Tomorrow promised to be a day full of wonder, laughter, and memories that would last a lifetime. The next morning, a soft golden light spilled across the living room, casting long shadows from the Christmas tree. Snowflakes drifted lazily past the window, turning the world outside into a sparkling wonderland. Emily awoke with a burst of excitement, her small heart beating fast. Today was the day of her Christmas surprise, and she could hardly wait to share it with her father and Mariah. She jumped out of bed and ran to the living room, careful not to wake John yet. Mariah was already there, sitting quietly near the fireplace, looking out the window at the gentle snow. Her eyes held a calm warmth, a kind of quiet anticipation that Emily had come to love. "Good morning, Mariah," Emily called softly. "Are you ready for my Christmas surprise?" Mariah turned and smiled. "Good morning, Emily. I think I am, but I don't know what it could be. You've kept me guessing for days." Emily giggled and ran to the kitchen to help prepare breakfast. She was determined that today would be perfect, every detail in place before revealing her surprise. Together they made fluffy pancakes, fresh fruit, and hot cocoa, adding little touches like whipped cream and sprinkles that Emily insisted were essential. John joined them, curious about Emily's excitement. "Emily, you've been planning this for days," John said, a teasing smile on his face. "What is this big surprise of yours?" Emily shook her head and wagged her finger.
"No peeking, Daddy. You'll see soon enough." After breakfast, Emily rushed to her room to retrieve a small, carefully wrapped box.
She held it tightly in her hands, her fingers trembling with excitement. "It's time," she whispered to herself. "Ah." She looked at Mariah, who watched her quietly with a gentle smile, and then at John, who raised an eyebrow trying to hide his curiosity. Emily led them to the living room where the Christmas tree sparkled with the ornaments they had made together. Pine cones, beads, feathers, and tiny charms created a tapestry of stories and memories, each one carefully crafted by Emily and Mariah. Emily knelt in front of the tree and set the small box on the floor. "This is it," she announced proudly. "My Christmas surprise for both of you." John and Mariah exchanged glances, intrigued. Emily carefully opened the box, revealing its contents, a delicate ornament shaped like a heart, made of tiny beads, twine, and feathers. It was unlike any ornament on the tree, shining with a soft golden glow in the light of the morning sun. Emily held it up for them to see. "This ornament is for us," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "It's to remind us that we're a family, even if we're not connected by blood. It's full of all the love, kindness, and stories we've shared these past days. Every bead, every feather, every piece of twine is a memory, a moment, or a wish for the future." Mariah's eyes filled with tears, and John felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't expected something so simple, yet so powerful. Emily gently handed the ornament to Mariah. "This is for you, Mariah," she said softly. "You've taught me so much already about courage, kindness, and the magic of stories. Now you're part of our family, and this is proof that we're all connected."
Mariah accepted the ornament with trembling hands, carefully placing it on the highest branch of the tree.
She took a step back, her eyes glistening. Emily, Emily, I, I, this is the most beautiful gift I have ever received. You've made me feel alive, hopeful, and loved. I can't thank you enough. John moved closer, placing a hand on Mariah's shoulder. Emily, this is incredible. You've reminded us both what Christmas is really about. Not the presents, but the love we share and the moments we create together. Thank you, sweetheart. Emily beamed, her eyes sparkling. I'm glad you like it, but there's more. Daddy, Mariah, follow me. She grabbed their hands and led them to the window. Outside, the snow-covered yard had been transformed. Emily had spent the previous evening secretly arranging small handmade lanterns in the snow, each one glowing softly with a flickering candle inside. They formed a winding path from the front gate to the porch, and each lantern had a tiny charm hanging from it, just like the ones on the tree. Did you do all this? John asked, astonished. Emily nodded enthusiastically. Yes, I wanted to make a path of light for Mariah, to show her that she's welcome here, always. And each charm has a little story, just like our ornaments. Mariah was speechless. She stepped outside, her boots crunching softly in the snow, and followed the path, taking in every lantern and charm. Her eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming feeling of love, care, and thoughtfulness that Emily had put into this surprise.
This is incredible, Emily, Mariah whispered. I have never seen anything so beautiful.
You've brought light into my life in a way I never thought possible, Emily grinned. See, Daddy?
Mariah loves it.
John smiled, feeling a deep warmth in his chest. He realized that Emily's gift was more than just lanterns or ornaments. It was a symbol of connection, trust, and the power of small acts of love. The yard glowed softly in the winter evening, each lantern a tiny beacon of hope and togetherness. After admiring the lanterns, they all went back inside to finish decorating the tree. Emily added the final touches, placing a tiny star at the very top, a symbol of guidance and light. Mariah helped adjust the ornaments, making sure each one had its perfect place. John stood back watching the two of them work together, and felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. Once the decorating was complete, they sat together by the fire, sipping cocoa and sharing stories. Emily told tales of her favorite memories from the past days, while Mariah shared more about her childhood, her husband, and the traditions of her people. John listened quietly, feeling grateful for the unexpected turn their lives had taken. Emily finally looked at them with a mischievous smile. And now the last part of my Christmas surprise. She ran to the kitchen and returned with a small photo album she had made in secret. Each page was filled with pictures, drawings, and little notes documenting their time together. The ornaments they had made, the garlands, the lanterns, and even tiny sketches of the snowy woods. This is for all of us, Emily said, handing the album to Mariah. So we can remember this Christmas, the first one we spent together as a family. Mariah's hands shook slightly as she opened the album. She turned each page slowly, her eyes filling with tears of joy. Emily, this is beyond anything I could have imagined. You've captured everything, the magic, the love, the warmth. I will treasure this forever. John put an arm around Emily and Mariah, feeling a wave of emotion. Emily, you've done something extraordinary. This Christmas you've shown us the true meaning of family, kindness, and hope. Thank you.
Oh.
Emily snuggled between them, her heart full. I'm just glad you both like it. Christmas is better when we're all together. As the evening wore on, they shared a simple meal by the fire, laughing and talking about their favorite memories of the day. Outside, the snow continued to fall gently, blanketing the world in quiet magic. The lanterns in the yard glowed softly, casting a warm light through the windows, reminding them that even in the coldest of winters, love and kindness could shine brightly. Mariah looked at John and Emily, feeling a sense of belonging she had not felt in many years. For the first time, she realized that family was not only about blood, it was about hearts connecting, about kindness and love shared freely, and about moments like these that became memories to cherish forever. Emily finally yawned, her eyes heavy with sleep. She curled up on the rug near the fireplace, resting her head against Mariah's arm. Mariah gently stroked her hair, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and love. John looked at both of them and whispered softly, "This is a Christmas I will never forget." And so, on that snowy night in Cedar Pines, a small home glowed with warmth, light, and love. Emily's Christmas surprise had been more than decorations or gifts. It had been a gift of connection, hope, and the reminder that family could be chosen and created through love, kindness, and shared moments. It was a day that none of them would ever forget, a Christmas that would remain in their hearts forever.